Hey Armin. So I started talking with Jeffrey about this a bit before we started recording, but I've seen an uptick in recent days in media reports about essentially like tempering expectations for regime change. One was Netanyahu saying things allegedly in a closed meeting about not to expect that kind of thing, and that the idea is to like reduce the capabilities of the regime and not necessarily expect regime change. Another is that apparently JD Vance derided him on a phone call about like you promised us regime change and like we're not seeing the conditions on the ground and a bunch of stuff like that. I have really good reasons to think it's all bullshit because there hasn't been any signals that could potentially even point to disappointment in the Iranian people from toppling the regime because they've been told to stay home and they have been staying home. And like, what would be the argument? They haven't been staying home hard enough. Like, I can't even theoretically conceive of something. Maybe like the couple days before Nowruz, when they were told to go out and that the drones would be above head to help. That's like the best I can think, but I don't think you can take that as a signal either way, like too strongly. I was wondering if you have an idea for why those over the last like 3 days. I've seen a bunch of reports to that effect, and apparently Israel has allegedly shifted its military targets to more weapons as opposed to suppression. But again, I think there aren't really any suppression targets left for like big bombs. You have drones in the streets, but I don't know if there are any like besiege headquarters left. So I was wondering if you had an idea for why that is, and I'll tell you what I think is what's the only potential option that I see after I hear what you have to say.
Is there any credible source for that JD Vance news that you mentioned regards to but BB Netanyahu?
Yes,
Okay.
no, no. It's I just heard about it like 5 minutes before hopping on the call, and I don't take it seriously, but it's just part of a pattern over the last like 3 days of a bunch of reports pointing in that direction.
Right. So there's so much that I could talk about here, and I don't want to completely lean into, you know, I don't want this to be an echo chamber. So I want us to consider other points of views as well, right? I don't want us here to constantly, like, because we want regime change, just always come here and only talk about things that shows that what we want to happen is going to happen. I think here in this group is a good idea to consider counter arguments as well and take them very seriously, right? With regards to JD Vance, one thing that I think is good for us to recognize here is that Marco Rubio and JD Vance are having a competition regarding who's going to be, regards to the presidential campaign after President Trump, right? And how popular these military operations are is a very much part of their calculation. And the ch- the trick is, because this could go either way from their perspective. And right now, these military operations on average among Americans is not very popular, right? And probably the longer it lasts, the less popular it's going to become, unless there's a major achievement at some point. So it does make sense for JD Vance to. So the trick is how to be loyal to Trump, but also have a way to be able to tell Americans once the campaign starts that, well, I wasn't really for this military operation. The way you could do that is not say anything against it right now, because you don't want to betray Trump right now. That's not a good idea. But also, by having these rumors being spread around, to then take advantage of it once President Trump is not in office anymore, to come out and say, well, I was the guy who was trying to stop this. And also now, for example, including JD Vance in the negotiations with the Islamic Republic. So now I don't know if you heard, like, that it's not just Witkoff and Jared Kushner. JD Vance is now involved with that as well. this would be a good idea for JD Vance to, when that eventually presidential campaign starts, for him to say, I was trying to stop it. Like within my, the reason why I couldn't come out and say things at that point, like in the middle of it, is because well, where when we're in the middle of a, war, it's not a good idea to come out and say things that might jeopardize the military operations. But behind the scenes, I was the guy who was trying to stop it. This is why I was like, you heard these rumors because it's true, and also because I this is why I tried to get on, I got myself on that negotiating team because I was desperately trying to find a way to end these military operations. This would be a good thing to sell, to separate yourself from Marco Rubio, if you want to get take advantage of the Americans who are frustrated with this. Say Marco Rubio was the one who got us into this, but I was the one who was trying to stop it. So this is a political play as well. When it comes to military operations, like, I don't know how long it took for Saddam to fall, but since the beginning of the military operations, but 28 days people are saying, but 20, like, judging how things are going, like, oh, this is failing based on only 28 days is ridiculous. Is ridiculous. Like, everything is falling apart. Like, guys, it's not been even a month. It's not even been a month, right? So yeah, I do want to be honest here. There were a lot of assumptions, wrong assumptions, that this thing would happen really fast, right? And a lot of people came out and gave out their analysis like, oh, like, if Khamenei dies, the whole thing will fall apart, like maybe a few days after, right? And a lot of people were, because of all of that optimism, a lot of those people need to now correct their adjustments. A lot of Iranians are saying that we didn't know that they would be resisting this much, right? So honestly, guys, so a lot of Iranians assumed that just having millions of Iranians in the streets would be able to get rid of them. And we had millions of Iranians in the streets and it didn't get rid of them, right? And they assumed, and then the assumption was like, okay, then as soon as the Americans and Israeli attacks, they will probably fall within a week after that. And that happened and they didn't fall. Then the assumption, like, the assumption was like, if you kill Khamenei, they will fall. The Islamic Republic will fall within a week, and that didn't happen. Also, there was an assumption that once you start shooting these people left and right, they will stop resisting very fast because they're cowards and they want to live, and they will basically bend the knee and surrender. And that didn't happen. They're actually continuing to resist, right? So a lot of those assumptions have proven to be wrong, and that has disappointed many people. I don't want to just give you all the rainbows and butterflies here. So that's on that side, like, regarding why some people are disappointed, and it's making those people think that maybe there is no way to do regime change, given that so many of our assumptions about what it takes to do a regime change was wrong. So maybe there is no way to do a regime change. But the thing is that one way or another, this regime has to go. And even if you could tolerate the Islamic Republic before, you cannot tolerate this new version of it. I mean, given everything that the Islamic Republic is doing right now, it's becoming very, very clear that they should have, the idea of having to get rid of them was the correct idea. Like, if they can do this now, like, a lot of people are like, oh my god, they are doing this. But a lot of other people who have more influence, they're coming up with the opposite conclusion. Their opposite conclusion is like, oh my god, they could actually do all of this. Imagine if we didn't do it, if we didn't start this military operation and we just waited another 10 years, then they would have been able to do a lot more, and getting rid of such an evil would have been even more difficult, right? Like, given what the Islamic Republic is capable of doing, and given how willing they are to do the most, to cross the many red lines, then it's good thing that we did this, because if we just waited a little bit, then this menace, this bully in the region, if they eventually became nuclear, and trust me, they would have become nuclear if you didn't start this military operation. Imagine the things that they would do to the world and to the region once they got that confidence. So the true nature of the Islamic Republic is becoming very clear, especially to the countries in the region, and the tolerance for their existence is becoming less and less. And a lot of people are underestimating how much the Americans and especially the Israelis are willing to stay in this fight until it's over. Like this, even if this takes years, a lot of people are talking about 25 days, right? But even if this takes a couple of years, they're not going to quit until this thing is over. There is no way for the world, for America, and especially for Israel to be able to tolerate an Islamic Republic, especially a nuclear Islamic Republic. So this might take longer than people anticipated. Like it might even take longer than now some people here anticipate. I don't know. Like this might, I mean, here's one thing that I know: before any of this started, the head of Mossad said that this would take at least a year. And I'm not saying he's right, but he's the head of Mossad for a reason, right? So his understanding was that this will take at least a year. And I'm not saying this is going to take at least a year, but I just want us to mentally be prepared for something that a lot of us assume that might take like just a few weeks, but we might be in this for a much longer term. And also, please note that ceasefire doesn't mean the end of these military operations. Ceasefires, even if we do get to a ceasefire, I mean, we already saw what ceasefires with Hamas and Hezbollah looks like. It's just a pause. So ceasefire might be like it's just a pause in this military operation. And honestly, ceasefire will benefit the Americans and Israelis more than it would benefit the Islamic regime. If you do
Really
see a
quickly, can I
ceasefire,
clarify? When you say it'll take at least a year, are you talking about the bombing phase or including like the revolution phase afterwards?
oh, I'm saying until the full fall of the regime, until regime change, like full and complete, like yeah. By the way, I'm not saying that. I'm just quoting another person that probably has more information than I do. And by the way, some people having more information than I do, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're right, because I've seen people with more information than me that are saying contradictory things. All right. So, okay. So I've seen people well, way more informed than me, with way more information than me, with way more experience than me, saying two things, like saying different things that are completely contradict each other. So saying somebody has a lot of information and a lot of knowledge doesn't make their, it's not like a revelation from God or anything because of what they're saying. I'm just, but we have, but it only means that we have to take what they're saying very seriously. That's what it means. But what I do know is that other than Americans and Israelis, is that one thing that we also, so a lot of people talk about the Americans and they don't take the Israeli factor into and in their analysis. They're looking at internal American politics and see whether these military operations stop or not. And they forget that, hey, Israel is also here and they're not going to let go until this is over. And then I see people who take into account Americans and Israelis and they don't factor in the Iranian people. And the Iranian people are not going to tolerate the Islamic Republic, especially after what they did in early January. Like I think a lot of people are underestimating that how big of a deal that is. And uh, and oh, one thing I was saying regarding ceasefire is going to allow the Israelis and Americans and the Iranian people to strategize, to recover, to rebuild, to rearrange things. For Americans, it also has a cost because the political capital of the Americans are reducing. Israelis don't have that issue. The Israelis back these military operations, and the Israelis are more used to than Americans in going in and out of military operations. So the political cost of capital in Israel is, not lacking. But the thing is, for the Islamic Republic, if you have a ceasefire at some point, it's going to make them have to now focus on their own internal competition and division and filling the power vacuum, and the internal division will make them weaker. When it comes to the Iranian people, if there is a ceasefire, I could see a positive and a negative. A negative would be that many Iranian people might think that, okay, they have been abandoned and they're stuck with the Islamic Republic and they might lose hope. But there are some other effects on some other Iranian people who might think like, okay, now it's our turn. Now that they're not there, so this means that we need to become we need to now pick up where the Americans and Israelis have left off, and it might actually start. We'll once the military operation stops, we might see more mobilization of Iranian people against the regime. So we might look at that. But again, I just think that we're not going this none of this is going to completely stop until there's no Islamic Republic, because I just don't see the world being able to tolerate this. And even the Arab countries around the Persian Gulf, like even like Saudi Arabia is is as aggressive as Israel right now when it comes, well, not with regards to their military operation, but with regards to their asking for regime change. They're now full on out there and very clearly asking that Americans do not. But by the way, we should also take this into account, because I suspect the UAE wants the same thing. Like both the UAE and Saudi Arabia now want full regime change based on everything that has happened. And when it comes to political capital, Saudis and Emiratis, they have lobbies, they have financial influence, they have lobbying influence in Washington D.C., so that might buy some political capital for President Trump to go on for full regime change. So we have to take that into account as well. By the way, did I even answer your question or did I get off track, guy?
Partially.
Well, what did I not respond to? So let me make sure I
So it
cover that
wasn't
as well.
specifically just the JD Vance article.
Mhm.
It's like I'm seeing from a bunch of different places. The Wall Street Journal, Mr. Navabi has also reported that like Israel is changing its perspective with regards to regime change. Some Netanyahu quotes about like this is not gonna, like, tempering expectations and stuff like that, and like a lot of it has been concentrated over the last like 2 or 3 days. Now I don't see how something could have happened over the last 2 or 3 days to trigger it, except for the negotiations. And I think it might be a ploy to get the regime to behave, to not go completely bonkers, because they see a way out that leaves them intact and leaves them to fight another day. And that, like, if they think, well, if we lose then the regime is over, then they're just going to go all out. But if they see like cracks between Israel and America, and like with the thinking that okay, the regime is probably going to survive, then they might not go like balls to the wall. Also, I just realized the report about JD Vance is probably from Axios, specifically Barak Ravid. And Barak Ravid has historically been someone who has been used to feed information by the Americans about like rifts with Israel right before the strike on Fordo and stuff like that. So he's a bit of a stooge in that regard. And so that sort of jives with what I'm thinking.
So the way I said, there's like three possibilities that I could think of. Is either, like you said, mind games with the regime. It could be a signal to President Trump, or people who support President Trump, that, oh, we're not we're aligned with President Trump. Like if he wants to talk, like we're not going to do something, like we're not against them. Like it's basically a signaling that we're on the same side of things. So it might be a political reason. It also, when it comes to tempering expectations, it could be that, but I think short term. You know what I mean? Like, meaning that Israelis might have changed their calculations regarding what's possible for regime change short term, but I can't imagine them giving up, like putting the regime change aside. It's more about this taking longer than originally communicated,
Because of like the
or
number of defections and stuff like that.
no, because. because we never knew, like, we have to accept what we didn't know. We never knew what parts of what percentage of the IRGC will continue to fight, and how much of it would have just collapsed and surrender once their main leaders were taken out, right? So, to be honest, the percentage of the IRGC that continues to fight is higher than what many people anticipated. It's higher. The idea that if you take out their leaders, everything will collapse, that hasn't been true, right? It has limited their abilities, but they're still out there. They're still fighting, right? And it doesn't take that much for to cause a lot of frustration and it cause a lot of chaos. Like, even if you take out 90% of their missile capabilities, they should as long as they could just shoot some missiles sometimes, that would be enough for people for them to cause enough chaos to frustrate and basically have a huge influence on the economy. So, for example, a lot of people, you need to separate the how commercial how people in the business world think compared to how people in the military world. Like, so if you have like a military ship going through the strait, if they think that there's a 10% chance that somebody's going to attack him and 90% chance that not, like, that's a pretty good number for from a military perspective, right? But if you're a commercial ship and you're like, hey, go through this, there's only a 5% chance that somebody's going to try to attack you, and even if it happens, it's probably not going to hit you. A commercial ship was like, no, thank you. Right? Tell me when it's 100% chance that nobody is going to hit me, right? Like, right? So just being able to shoot some missiles sometimes is enough to cause a lot of commercial disruptions, right? Even if it's not going to hit the ship. The risk tolerance in business world is very low, much lower than in the military world. And here's the pro and this is actually why you cannot tolerate the Islamic Republic, because if they survive this, they're going to realize how much control they could have with very limited money. Like, this is not just a discovery moment for us, it's also a discovery moment for the Islamic Republic. Like, the information that we didn't have regarding what they could do, guess what, the Islamic Republic didn't have that information either. Okay, so they're also realizing what they can do. They're gathering a lot of experience and a lot of information as well. So if you stop these military operations and just let the Islamic Republic continue, they're like, oh wow, we just need like very few cheap drones that are not even accurate. And if we just shoot some of them sometimes at the Strait of Hormuz, we could basically completely stop the this whole economic activity in this region if we wanted to. That's all it takes. And that's not very expensive. And we just need a little bit of money to be able to do that, right? So this is going to embolden them, and this is going to make them feel like they own this area. They own the entire Persian Gulf, and that's that confidence that you gift them if you do not finish them. Because I mean, from their perspective, like two of the strongest military powers of the on the globe came to topple me, and now they left, and I'm still here. So wow, I'm actually stronger than I thought. And I'm gonna go do a whole I'm not gonna let them run away. I'm gonna go hunt it, like, cause them a lot of chaos, a lot of hardship everywhere in the world. Even I might even go and expand the strategy to bubble Mendeb. Like, what if it's this easy to cause this much disruption at the Strait of Hormuz? Why do one strait when I could do two, right? Why not expand this ability around the world? So this newfound, and their followers will become a lot more confident that they could basically disrupt the global economy by very easily, and they're going to expand their operations globally. And this is why I don't think the world can tolerate this new Islamic Republic. And even if the Israelis, like, when you're like, oh, Israelis, they have reevaluated, so that maybe they don't want to do regime change, right? I mean, I've heard, like, we've been here with Hezbollah and Hamas. Just because the Israelis say, like, okay, let's stop, it doesn't mean that they're not going to start. It's they can always restart. They could always start again. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So just as like a one quick like couple word answer, and then I'll let Jeffrey hop in.
Mm.
Are you less confident than you were originally that this war will lead to the regime collapsing?
Well, my evaluation is the regime would eventually collapse one way or another. Okay. It's just not sustainable the way that things are going with them, right? I mean, the main reason why I think that is because I keep taking into account the millions of Iranians inside Iran as well in this calculation. And the economic hardship is going to be increasing. The economic hardship that keeps being the spark of Iranian people coming into the streets. A lot of people are underestimating the effect of the early January massacre on the determination on the Iranian people that we can't live with this regime. A lot of people are underestimating how much of an effect that had on the minds of many people who were with the regime, who might have stopped being with the regime after they saw what the regime is capable of. A lot of people are underestimating the effect of all the countries in the region not being able to have a normal relationship with the Islamic Republic after this, which is going to isolate the Islamic Republic even more if these military operations stops. I just see the Islamic Republic getting weaker and weaker and weaker. I see that I also very confident that Israel is not going to allow the Islamic Republic to just recover from all of this. After how, I mean, they didn't come this far to just come this far and then stop and let the Islamic Republic rebuild after this and become even a bigger threat than it was before these military operations. So I think that the thing that we need to reevaluate is how long this takes, not whether it will happen or not, but it's just might take a lot longer than many people anticipated. That's what I think. I mean, and it might not, because like if you look at the history of revolutions, when eventually they became successful, the last few, you know, days or weeks before the fall of the regime, things happened really quickly, and everything seemed same as usual up until the very last few days. It's like cutting down a tree. Like you're swinging, you're swinging, you're swinging, and the tree seems like it's standing, and all of a sudden you hear things cracking, and the whole thing collapses all of a sudden suddenly. So everything is very slow, and all of a sudden it becomes really, really fast. But nobody knows when that moment is. But this thing could take, to me, this thing could take as long as a couple of years to just next week or something like that, or maybe even tomorrow. It's all over the place. So, and I don't think we should be very confident regarding how long this is going to take. I do think that we are going to eventually get there. What do you think, by the way, Guy? Based on everything that we're discussing, what's your opinion?
So I know Jeffrey has been wanting to get in for a while, so I don't want
Uh,
to. So I'll quickly answer. I I think that the regime is on its last legs, and I think like as soon as the active fighting stops, as long as it's not in a way that gives the regime a lot of momentum, then His Royal Highness will tell the Iranian people to go out pretty much immediately, because the more you wait, the longer they have to restore themselves. The one thing that worries me is that I've heard from, I think, you a couple of times, and from other also people from within Iran, that they're like, don't stop bombing until the regime falls. And practically that's not sustainable, because the last part is what the Iranian people need to do. So I don't know how widespread that approach is compared to do as much as you can and then we'll finish the job. Because if the Iranian people don't have the agency in this situation, then I can see it not succeeding. But I think that that's what it either stands or falls on.
A more accurate version of that is, don't stop until we're basically pushing for it to not stop until the suppressing power of the regime gets to a minimum. And then on top of that, what we're hoping for is not bombing, but
Drone.
drone presence in the streets when the Iranian people do the uprising. If that happens, that would be very, very helpful. That would be amazing if when the Iranian people are in the streets, there are drones buzzing around. We saw something similar to that reported, like we saw something similar to that in Charsham, Missouri.
Yep.
It was reported that that happened. So if that also happens when the final uprising day comes, that would be incredible. And it will give the Iranian people a huge advantage. By the way, also please don't forget that we had Admiral Cooper, CENTCOM Commander Admiral Cooper, mentioning that the Iranian people need to stay home until the signal is given. And that coming from him is very significant because he's not a politician. So when military commanders usually speak, it's more based on objective reality and things that are actually going to happen. Not always, but relative to politicians, it's less, politicking, is so him saying that suggests to me that the plan is still from not just from the Israelis but to the Americans is to getting to that point. And maybe everything else we're hearing is just political game and confusion and causing confusion for within the Islamic Republic, and that is still the actual plan that we're going for.
That's the reason I was thinking the way I was thinking, because of Brad Cooper's interview with Ryan International. Okay, I'll let people respond because they
Okay,
seem
okay.
a little
And guys, I forgot to mention I only have 1 hour and 50 minutes, which means I shouldn't have been talking for this long. Well, 1 hour and 20 minutes because Goldie is going to a her birthday thing, and I need to go back and talk, fill in for her. But yeah, sorry
Okay.
about that. I should have mentioned that.
In that case, we're gonna do everything in the future way faster. Jeffrey, Sherry, and Peter, in that order, wanted to respond.
Touch on some of
Look,
the points that were brought up. So, with regards to arguments between Vance and Netanyahu, Secretary of State Rubio blasted that bullshit out of the water literally 2.5 hours ago, right after he came out of the G7. That's not true, at least as far as the Secretary of State Rubio had stated. Assessments regarding like where we are versus where we thought we'd be. So assessments at one point in time is not the same as assessments as the environment evolves. That said, we are very much ahead of time, ahead of schedule. I'll get to that in a minute. So you have a slight protracted initial phase is in part due to the Mullah regime getting backfilled via Chinese Communist Party, Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state, North Korean regime, elements out of Pakistan, some other co-aligned sub-state transnational actors, which we're dealing with. As far as like the regardless of what happened, we had to hit the Mullah regime no matter what, and that's in part due to the fact that the Mullah regime was in the advanced stages of a mass launch against Israel with solid fuel ballistic missiles and or mass drone strikes, and there was reasonable intelligence that said there's a pretty high degree of probability, or at least a reasonable probability, the Mullah regime was marrying, you know, chemical biological warheads to solid fuel ballistic missiles. There'll be some leakers, and if Israel was hit with chemical or biological warheads, Israeli stated doctrine, this was borne out since the first Gulf Wars, if they're hit with chemical weapons, their response will be strategic, meaning nuclear weapons will be used inside the Middle East, and that would cause an unacceptable risk of uncontrolled escalation. So we went in with Israel to sit there and fully suppress Mullah preemptive and or retaliatory capability. As far as like the Mullah regime being allowed to exist, I mean, Armin touched on that. It's, the Mullah regime's behavior very much illustrates that it's inelastic in its motives, and that's in part due to its pseudo theological motivation that underpins, their motivations. They don't frame things physically like the Soviet Union or other non-theological or pseudo theologically motivated actors. As far as pausing, it does allow Israeli and U.S. to reconstitute capabilities, say like critical munitions, albeit we're beyond the use of critical munitions now because we have complete air dominance over Iran and we're dropping warheads on foreheads for a nickel. It also allows co-aligned actors to facilitate some of the and to so like Putin, Chicoms, other people to try and facilitate reconstitution of the remnants of the regime.
I don't know why you sound frustrated because when we have time limit and we have other people who want to speak as well. So I think you should understand. But yes,